Greetings everyone, and welcome once again to the Dracovin Empire. We're heading back into the world of Magic the Gathering today. Yes, we're returning to the history of Magic the Gathering, where I, your host here, Tantus Dracovin, describe to you, inform you of the various products and stuff that was put out over the history of Magic the Gathering. It's really product line, main product line more than anything, and some side things here and there. Today, we got a duel deck. Garruk versus Liliana. Great battle between the two of them. The cursing of Garruk, the storylines related to it. But anyway, are you ready to planeswalk? Travel through the blind eternities? So grab your mana, prepare your spells, your summons. We're diving in to the world of Magic the Gathering. Woo! Through the blind eternities. Well, where are we now? Well, we're not anywhere in particular. We're watching a great battle unfold between two legendary planeswalkers who have had great storylines through a lot of them. And that, of course, is Garruk and Liliana. So yes, we're talking about the duel deck Garruk and Liliana. It was the fourth of the Duel Deck Series. It was released on October 30th of 2009. We still have an MSRP at this point in time. We haven't gotten rid of them like we have in Modern Magic. So this MSRP was $19.99 US. So, yeah. Of course, we've got this leaf with Liliana's inverted headband as the symbol here. The main designers were Garruk Rares and Gregory Marquise, with both of them also developing it. This was traditionally thought to be fought on Chandelar, but it is multiversal, though, again, it's kind of that connection. It was two 60-card theme decks for a whole of 120 cards, and, yeah, it was Duel Deck D, it was expansion code. Now, there is a reprint with new card frames in December of 2014 in Duel Deck's Anthology. I'm just mentioning it here, but we'll get into it more in the future. So what is this product here? Well, it's two pre-constructed theme decks. One is centered on Garruk Wildspeaker, and the other on the Liliana Fess. So, yeah, it's basically the rivalry between these two planeswalkers with some flavor-based decks connecting to both of their ideas of flavor. Garruk being beasts and large stompy creatures, Liliana being a necromancer and summoning things and throwing them out there. So there is this definitely connections between the two of them. Now, it did feature, of course, Liliana and Garruk in two alternate art holographic treatments. But there were further other cards that had specific artwork that began in this set. Blastoderm, Harmonize, Mutilate, and Snuff Out. All of them had this art here, which may appear again in the future for some of these cards, started in this duel deck. This is different art than was published for these cards before. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, again, some of these art continued in the future in other reprints of these cards. Others, it is the only treatment they got. There were 3 tokens that were given out. Again, there was also a learn-to-play strategy insert, but these 3 creature tokens were a 3/3 beast for being created by Garruk, a 4/4 beast for created by Beast Attack, and a 3/3 elephant for Elephant Attack. These were the only tokens in there. Liliana did not create any tokens of her own. As for story, well, 2 web novels tell us basically the story and setup of this. The story comes to, of course, Wild Sun, which is the Garruk one, and the other one being The Veil's Curse, which is the Liliana. These 2 webcomics, Veil's Curse was originally published in July and August of 2009. The Wild Sun in December of 2009. So again, these tell the story of this, and they're both around here. This wasn't meant to be the only way to tell this story. It's basically, and again, it's also the Hunter in the Veil webcomic, which Garruk and Liliana. Basically, Garruk's trying to keep Liliana from getting a dangerous artifact with the Veil. He fights him, she uses necrotic powers, eventually obtaining the Veil, cursing Garruk with the powers before planeswalking away. It becomes a story. There was, again, there's some more webcomics in this area, but these are the main stories of these 2 characters and where they kind of intersect. There was actually supposed to be a novel based around this entire thing. This one here, The Curse of the Chain Veil. We have this cover, but this was never published. The Curse of the Chain Veil was never published. A webcomic called The Veil's Curse showing that, Garruk attacking Jason Blair and attempting to find Lana, which is kind of set around this entire thing too. We got that eventually. But this novel here, which we know about, which was supposedly going to be published in February 2020, but was postponed indefinitely. So yeah. We got the book cover, we knew it was going to come out, it just got postponed and never put out. But this was supposed to be one of the Planeswalker novels about this. Just never unreleased it. Never got the full story of this, which would have gone a lot more into depth of the battle they had between each other, the eventual cursing of Garruk. We got some web comics about it, but that's not it. Now, when we look at the decks, we can look at the rares, which kind of scream a lot. And each of the decks has 4 rares. To start out with the Garruk's deck, we have Garruk Wildspeaker himself. It's a holographic foil of the simple Garruk, where he gives everybody an overrun effect, puts beast tokens into play, untap land. Pretty simple, but a lot of his things are big beasts, creating beast tokens, a lot of spells like that. The other rares we got were, of course, Plated Slagworm, which can be targeted. It's got hexproof, 8/8. We also got Ravenous Bladeloft, where you can sacrifice another beast you control to gain life. That's to get a little bit of life gaining in there. Pretty good. You can create some beasts with beast tokens. Garruk can create beasts that you can possibly sacrifice for some life, for some boosting up. Little good bits of there. And then, of course, Rude Awakening, where you can untap all lands, or at the end of turn, until end turn, your lands become creatures, or you can do both of them. This is a big possible ender spell where you get all your lands and they're all creatures. You tap all that mana, you cast a bunch of spells. And then, my last thing I do, I Rude Awakening, I entwined it. They're now, big creatures and things like that. There were, again, a lot of other spells, things in here like Serrated Arrows, Drancor, Elephant Guide, Overrun itself was in here, Vine Trellis, Stampede Wildebeests. I can name a lot of them, with Treetop Village and Slippery Parks, the only non-basic lands in the deck. But these rares here usually scream the most of how the deck is built. We usually look at rares to see how a pre-made really stands out. Let's talk about the Liliana deck a little bit here. Because we have Liliana herself, which can have a target discard a card, search a library for a card, put it on top of your library, or basically get all creatures in the graveyard back into play under your control. Big resurrections. Again, she's a very creature-heavy deck, but it's a lot of undead, the zombies, necromancy-related things with a lot of black death spells and stuff like that. She does have some good things here. Bad Moon. It's a classic from Unlimited /Alpha/Beta. Black creatures get +1/+1. It's always been rare. We see it again here. Her spells mutilate all creatures getting -1/-1 for each swamp you control. This is a great way if you're ready to bust out Liliana's big guns and use her ultimate. You can basically murder everything, including your own creatures, and then they all come back. That's what we got mutilate here. It's a game ender. It's a big rare there. And of course, Skeletal Vampire, who comes into play with bat tokens. You can sacrifice 1 bat to create 2. I've seen a bunch of decks related to Skeletal Vampire where you spend mana, get rid of 1 bat to get 2 bats. It's a great way of pumping out tokens. Other things that we have are things like simple cards like Sign in Blood, Corrupt, which are very big spells. Some things like Snuff Out Kitty Send for attacks for more monsters, Ravenous Rats, Vampire Bats, very simple black creatures, Drudge Skeletons, which regenerate, and Polluted Mire was the only non-basic lands. So it's a very simple undead graveyard deck to a degree, really with her being the big graveyard ways, with some other things that can... But it's, again, simple black deck, very traditional black deck. Some things, Rise of the Grave is with Graveyard Resurrection, that we can get some stuff back. But yeah, there's the dual decks. That's where you kind of get an idea about it. And I don't think either of them were terribly built. I think in this case, I'm going to say they're not like super great decks, but they're not bad decks either. If we look at what they are, and at the time period what cards they were produced with, they're fine. They're both fine decks. And I think that's an important thing about when we talk about these two decks. When we come to pre-made decks, we never really expect gold. We want silver or copper, kind of things like that. We want something middle of the road. We want that C's or B's for quality of how it plays. We're not expecting the world with, again, sometimes you expect, at least price-wise, that they make do. I can't tell you off the top of my head if these two pre-made decks are worth $20, but $20, $10 for one of these decks. I think when I say that kind of screams that there's some value for it, originally as it was. Again, nowadays, if you would purchase it, it's probably a lot more, depending on, things like a lot of factors. It's the unfortunate thing that it has been well over 10 years since it was produced. But if you were back then and you needed some interesting decks, you wanted a good green deck or a good black deck, these weren't bad to grab. They, by themselves, were okay. They could play against themselves. And if you wanted some kind of starter deck, these are great starter decks that aren't particularly tied to one set release. And I think that's where the dual decks shined best. And not all dual decks are like that, but certainly these, I look at them and I say, yeah, these aren't bad. These aren't bad. And there's definitely some cards in these that aren't even rare that I can look at when I'm looking at their card lists and say, hey, that's not bad. I can understand how. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about this dual deck today. It's a pretty simple one when we talk about history, but yeah. Oh, whoops, hitting buttons. Hitting the wrong buttons. Hitting the wrong buttons! Everything's breaking and falling on fire! I hope you enjoyed joining me today. The dual decks are really cool items, and again, when we're talking about the Magic Gathering history, I'm talking about the sets and products as they were released, and this is one that I'm like, yeah, it's a good one to know about. Is it going to scream, I'm introducing things, I'm being something hugely different? No. But it's getting Planeswalkers out into everybody's hands very easily without buying them individually, especially with cool art treatments. And it's getting decent products that are decent decks for people to start with. I think that's the thing about dual decks. A lot of them were great places to start. Again, they're a mixed bag sometimes for these things, but I feel like this one, I look at the pre-constructed decks, and I'm like, those look okay. They look okay. They look decent. Anyway, remember, check me out either on Twitch or YouTube in the future. My schedule for when I'm alive or putting up stuff on either of those is up on my Discord, Twitter/X, and my YouTube. I put all those schedules up. Joining me on YouTube, give that like, follow, subscribe, all that kind of great stuff. Joining me on Twitch, follow would be great. Remember to... My question today is, did you get Garruk first long? I got that dual deck back in the day. I think I broke both of them down. Most of my dual decks I broke down. I think the next dual deck we talk about is the only one I technically still have. And that was the Phyrexian Coalition deck, because I technically think I merged the two of them. And created a new deck. Something a little interesting and different. I think I still have that deck, the merged and updated Phyrexian Coalition. It doesn't have a lot of the original cards left, but that's what it started as. Most of these other dual decks I did tend to just break down and use for parts. But sometimes you got chances to play them with people. Sometimes. I was a fan of it, though, certainly back in the day. Again, because, not that I don't dislike Commander, I like Commander too, but I'm always a sucker for old forms, just multiplayer at the table. Yeah. So, let me know. And remember, check out those social medias, Discord, Twitter. That's always a great place to see what's going on with me and things like that. Twitter/X. And, yeah. Crimson Queen, Wednesdays at 8 for live play of Pathfinder First Edition and discussing the Pop Insiders. We'll talk about news of the week and more, with Magic and other stuff. Check those out. That's at 6 p.m. on Saturday, 8 on Wednesdays. Anyway, everyone, I'm going to get going. I hope you enjoyed, and until the next time we hang out, talk about anything or anything else, I bid you all out there a deep and wonderful farewell.